chosen ones only, the best way to heal spiritually after the hardest betrayals. You never expected. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't come from your enemies. It comes from the people you let into your heart, the ones you trusted when your soul was naked. And when it happens, it doesn't just cut, it shatters. It breaks something deep inside you that words can't reach. The moment it hits, there's disbelief. Your mind can't wrap itself around it. How could they? Becomes a loop in your head. You replay the memories, the promises, the smiles that now feel like poison, and something inside you collapses. And that's where the spiritual journey really begins. Not in temples, not on mountaintops, but in that raw, shaking moment when everything you believed in falls apart. That's the crucible of the chosen ones. That's where the soul is cracked open, not to destroy you, but to awaken you. We don't talk about this enough in the spiritual world. We talk about love, light, alignment, manifestation, but we don't talk enough about betrayal. And yet, it's one of the most spiritually catalytic experiences a person can go through, because betrayal doesn't just hurt you, it transforms you. It forces you to confront illusions you were clinging to. It reveals the truth about others, yes, but more than that, it reveals the truth about yourself. It shows you where you gave your power away, where you ignored the red flags, where you sacrificed your own voice just to hold on to someone who was already halfway out the door. And in that painful clarity, something sacred is born. The opportunity to reclaim yourself.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
You see, betrayal is not just a breaking, it's a spiritual initiation. The ancient mystics knew this. They saw betrayal not as the end, but as the beginning of awakening. Because when someone betrays you, what they're really doing is forcing you to wake up. To stop believing the illusion, to stop outsourcing your worth, to stop confusing attachment for love. And yes, it hurts. It feels like your insides are being torn apart, but underneath that pain is truth. And truth is the most powerful force in the universe. So let me ask you something very real. What if the betrayal was the medicine? What if the person who broke you was actually your teacher in disguise, not because they were right, not because what they did was okay, but because their betrayal forced you to see the parts of yourself that were still asleep, the parts that needed validation, the parts that were willing to betray yourself just to not be abandoned? What if the pain didn't come to punish you, but to purify you? This is the perspective of the chosen ones. We don't see betrayal as just a wound. We see it as a portal, a doorway that opens to a higher version of ourselves, but only if we walk through it consciously. Most people don't. Most people close their hearts. They armor up. They decide it's safer not to trust, not to feel, not to love again. And I get it. I've been there. But when you close your heart to avoid pain, you also close it to divine power. You block the very energy that wants to heal you. So the real question becomes, are you willing to stay open even when it hurts? Spiritual healing after betrayal doesn't begin with forgiveness. That comes later, and it comes naturally when the soul is ready. No, it begins with feeling, with facing the grief, the anger, the rage, the shame. Because betrayal doesn't just break the heart, it fragments the self. You start to question your own reality. You wonder if you imagined the good times. You gaslight yourself just like they did. you lose your inner compass. And to heal, you have to reclaim your inner truth. You have to stop asking why they did it and start asking what it woke up in you. Because betrayal is a mirror, a brutal one, but it shows you where you were still asleep and where you are now being called to rise. You begin by acknowledging the pain without judgment. You sit with it, you breathe into it, you let it burn, and in that burning, the illusions die. You realize that the version of you that needed their approval is gone. The version of you that stayed silent to keep the peace is gone. What's left is raw, yes, but it's real. And that realness is your power. That's where God meets you. Not in your perfection, not in your performance, but in that sacred, shattered space where you finally drop the masks and whisper, "I don't know who I am anymore." And the universe responds, "Good, now we begin." This is the beginning of spiritual healing, radical honesty, not spiritual bypassing, not rushing to say everything happens for a reason. No. You slow down, you rage, you cry, you write letters you'll never send, you scream into pillows, you walk into the woods and let the trees hold your pain. You let yourself feel without trying to fix it, because the pain has something to teach you. And until you listen, it will keep coming back. That's the thing about divine lessons. They don't leave just because you want them to. They leave when you get the message. And the message of betrayal is this: you are more powerful than you think. You are more whole than you feel. You are not what they did to you. You are what you do next. And no one can take that from you. So I ask you now, with all the love in my being, are you willing to alchemize this pain into power? Are you ready to become the version of yourself that was hiding beneath the betrayal all along? Because this is not the end. This is your rebirth, the alchemy of pain. How to spiritually transmute betrayal into power, purpose, and peace. There's a moment after the storm when everything feels quiet. Not peaceful, but eerily still. That moment when the tears have dried, the anger has burned itself out, and you're left staring into the mirror of your own soul. That's where the real work begins, because now, without the noise, you can finally hear what your soul has been trying to tell you all along. This pain is not your prison. It's your portal. This is where we begin the process the ancients called alchemy. Not the turning of metal into gold, but the turning of suffering into wisdom, betrayal into purpose, heartbreak into divine alignment. You see, pain is pure energy, and energy is never lost, it's only transformed. The betrayal you experienced holds an enormous amount of spiritual energy, but right now it's locked in the vibration of grief, rage, and confusion. That's not wrong, it's just raw. But when you learn how to sit with that energy without running, numbing, or blaming, it begins to shift. It starts to crack open. And in that cracking, light begins to leak through. The first light of power. And I don't mean the kind of power that dominates. I mean the kind of power that liberates. So how do we begin this transformation? First, we must change our relationship with pain. Most of us have been trained to fear it, avoid it, escape it. But the chosen ones, the spiritually initiated, learn to befriend it. Pain is a teacher disguised as a wound. It comes bearing a message. There is something inside you that you forgot, something you gave away in the name of love, loyalty, or fear. and it's time to take it back. You don't heal by forgetting. You heal by remembering who you were before the betrayal ever happened. That powerful, radiant, intuitive being who trusted their own heart. That's who's waiting for you on the other side of this. There's a sacred step in this journey most skip over. Ownership, not of what they did to you, but of what you allowed, tolerated, or ignored in the name of peace. This is not about blame, it's about reclaiming your inner authority, because betrayal doesn't just happen in one moment. It's a culmination of all the little moments you said yes when you meant no. All the times you felt the warning in your gut but silenced it. All the times you made yourself small so someone else could feel big. And when you finally own that, when you stop waiting for apologies and start giving yourself permission to fully wake up, that's when the alchemy begins. Next comes the most powerful shift of all, turning your pain into purpose. This doesn't mean you have to go start a movement or write a book, though you might. It simply means asking the deepest question of all. How can this pain serve something greater than itself? Maybe it teaches you how to hold space for others. Maybe it makes you an advocate for truth. Maybe it sharpens your discernment so you never betray yourself again. Every betrayal carries a seed of purpose. And when you plant it in the soil of your soul, something miraculous grows. Not just healing, but mission. And from purpose comes peace. Not the shallow peace of pretending everything's fine, but the deep, grounded peace of knowing you've turned your wound into wisdom. That you didn't just survive, you transformed. That you didn't let what they did define you, you let it refine you. This kind of peace can't be bought or faked. It's born in the fire, it's earned. And once you taste it, you'll never settle for anything less again. But let me be clear, this is not a linear path. Healing from betrayal is a sacred spiral. You'll revisit the pain, you'll doubt your progress. Some days you'll feel strong, and others you'll collapse under the weight of memory. That's okay. That's part of the alchemy. Gold doesn't form instantly. It's forged, pressed, purified. So are you. Be patient, be gentle, but also be honest. Don't let the spiritual ego rush you into bypassing your own process. This isn't about appearing healed, it's about actually healing. And if you're still wondering whether you're strong enough to do this, let me tell you something your soul already knows. You wouldn't have been betrayed this deeply if you weren't being called this powerfully. The greater the betrayal, the deeper the calling. The pain didn't come to break you, it came to break you open, to strip away everything false so that only the sacred remains. So I ask you now, not as a guru, but as someone who's walked through this fire too. What if this betrayal is not the end of your story, but the beginning of your becoming? What if your heartbreak is the birthplace of your highest self? Because you don't just recover from betrayal, you resurrect from it, and when you do, you carry a frequency that no one can fake, a presence rooted in truth, purpose, and peace. The kind of presence that changes rooms, changes lives, changes worlds. The sacred armor, how to rebuild trust, protect your energy, and never betray yourself again. There comes a time after the betrayal, after the fire, after the breaking and the alchemy, when you begin to feel something new stirring inside. It's quiet at first, like the faint heartbeat of a self you haven't met yet, but it grows, and with it comes the realization that healing isn't just about finding peace. It's about building protection, not walls, not weapons, but something much deeper, sacred armor. The kind of inner strength that doesn't shut people out, but shields your soul. The kind of energetic clarity that says, I will love, but I will never abandon myself again. Because here's the truth. Betrayal teaches you how to trust again, but not the way you did before. Before, maybe your trust was blind, based on hope, fantasy, or the illusion of who someone could be. Now, your trust must become wise. It must be rooted in discernment, not desperation. You don't rebuild trust by rushing to let others back in. You rebuild trust by first rebuilding it with yourself. Can you trust your own intuition again? Can you trust your own boundaries? Can you trust that inner voice that whispers, something's off, even when everything on the surface looks perfect? This is where the sacred armor begins. Self-trust. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's the most powerful force you will ever carry. Because when you trust yourself, no one can manipulate you. No one can gaslight you into silence. No one can convince you to betray your own truth just to keep the peace. And that kind of power, it radiates. It protects you without needing to push others away. It creates a field around you that only truth can penetrate. But to build this armor, you have to face something many avoid. Your patterns. After betrayal, it's easy to point to the betrayer, but at some point the real healing happens when you look at the pattern that allowed it. Were you too forgiving? Too afraid to be alone? Too quick to abandon your own red flags for the sake of love, loyalty, or approval? These questions aren't meant to shame. They're meant to liberate, because once you see the pattern, you can break it. And once you break it, you're no longer a victim of betrayal. You become a guardian of your own energy. Protecting your energy is not about paranoia. It's about presence. It's about knowing who you are, what you carry, and how sacred your inner world is. Not everyone gets access to that. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table, and that doesn't make you cold, it makes you wise. You've been through too much to keep giving your light to people who only want to consume it. You're not here to be drained, you're here to shine, but to do that sustainably, you must learn to filter who gets close, not from fear, but from love. Love for yourself, love for your mission, love for your peace. One of the most powerful ways to protect your energy is through boundaries. Not the kind you shout, but the kind you embody. Real boundaries don't require explanation. They are felt. They are energetic. When you're rooted in self-worth, people feel it, they respect it, or they leave. Either way, you're safe. But boundaries are only as strong as your willingness to uphold them. So ask yourself, have I been betraying myself just to keep others comfortable? Because every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you stay quiet when your soul is screaming, every time you let someone back in who hasn't earned it, you're not being kind. You're being unavailable to yourself. And here's the thing no one tells you. The most dangerous kind of betrayal is not what others do to you. It's what you do to you. Every time you ignore your intuition, every time you silence your truth, every time you settle, you're betraying yourself. And that pain runs deeper than anything someone else can do to you. But the good news? You also hold the power to stop it. Right now, in this moment, by making a new vow, I will no longer abandon myself, not for love, not for comfort, not for anyone. This vow becomes your sacred armor. It's invisible, but it's indestructible. It's not about being guarded, it's about being so aligned with your truth that nothing false can stay. It's about knowing that your peace, your energy, your heart are not just valuable, they're holy. And once you treat them as such, the universe responds. You stop attracting betrayal, you start attracting reflection. People who see you because you've finally seen yourself. People who honor you because you've stopped dishonoring yourself. People who love you, but never at the cost of your own soul. So I ask you now, with all the clarity this journey has given you, are you ready to trust yourself so deeply that betrayal becomes impossible? Are you ready to live with boundaries that don't just protect you, but honor the divine within you? Because this is sacred work. This is spiritual maturity. This is what it means to rise after the fall, not as someone who is afraid to love again, but as someone who knows how to love without losing themselves. That is the sacred armor, and once you wear it, you will never walk the same again. The final ascension, becoming the healer, the light, and the guide for others still in the darkness. There's a moment on this path, after the heartbreak, after the fire, after reclaiming your power, when you realize something sacred, you made it through what was meant to destroy you. Not only did you survive, but you transcended. And in that transcendence, something ancient within you awakens. A knowing, a call, a purpose. You begin to feel that your journey was never just about your own healing. It was preparation, initiation, a divine setup for something greater. You were not just broken to be repaired, you were broken to become a bridge, a guide, a mirror for others who have forgotten their own light. And this is the final ascension, not just healing for yourself, but becoming the healer for those still lost in the dark. You don't have to be perfect to guide others. In fact, it's your scars that make you powerful. Your journey through betrayal has gifted you something no book, no teacher, no degree ever could. Embodied wisdom. The kind of wisdom that doesn't just speak, it transmits. When you walk into a room, people feel it. They feel the peace you fought for, the boundaries you bled for, the love you reclaimed for yourself. And in your presence, they begin to remember what's possible, not because you preach, but because you embody. That's the true spiritual authority. Not in words, but in frequency. But here's what's important to understand. Becoming a light in the world is not about being a savior. It's not about fixing others. It's about holding space without attachment. It's about knowing that everyone has their own timing, their own path, their own soul contracts. You don't lead by dragging people forward. You lead by walking in your truth and letting your life be the invitation. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you'll do is simply shine. Not because you need to be seen, but because your light makes it safer for others to step into theirs. This is the sacred responsibility of the chosen. You were entrusted with hardship, not as punishment, but as preparation. The betrayal that once broke you wide open was the same betrayal that broke open your compassion, your depth, your vision, your ability to see beyond people's masks and into their pain. But now you have to choose how to use that vision. Will you use it to judge, To protect yourself with cynicism, or will you use it to serve, to gently guide others back to themselves? Because when you've truly healed, you no longer need to prove your strength. You simply become it. And yes, there will be moments when you feel the old pain rise again. A smell, a song, a memory that brings it all back. But you'll notice something different now. It doesn't own you anymore. You can feel it, honor it, and release it. That's the mark of true healing. Not that the pain vanishes, but that it no longer controls your choices. You are no longer reactive, you are responsive, aligned, present. And in this presence, you become a safe harbor for others who are still in the storm. You'll start to notice that people come to you not just for advice, but for energy. They won't always know why. They'll say things like, "I feel calm around you," or "You help me see things clearly." That's because you become a vessel, an instrument. You've cleared enough of your own wounds that divine energy can now flow through you uninterrupted. You're no longer just living your life. You are transmitting light through your life, and this light is what the world needs most. But let me ask you something deep, something final. Are you willing to carry this light, even when no one claps for you? Even when it's hard, lonely, or thankless? Because the path of the guide is not always glamorous. It requires humility. It requires solitude. It requires the courage to keep walking with integrity, even when others don't understand. But it is also the most sacred path, because every person you inspire, every soul you help awaken, every tear you hold space for, quietly rewrites the story of humanity. And that matters more than you'll ever fully know. You've been through the betrayal, you've done the healing, you've built the armor, and now you stand at the edge of your own ascension, not into superiority, but into service, not into ego, but into embodied divinity. You are not who you once were. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are now a walking testament of what it means to rise. And in rising, you give others permission to rise too. So I ask you, for the final time in this journey, are you ready to live as the light? To walk this earth not just as a survivor, but as a healer, a guide, a sacred flame in a world full of shadows. Because this is not just a spiritual video, this is a movement, a remembering, a call to the chosen ones across the globe, the ones who were broken, betrayed, and buried, but who rose anyway. And now, it's your time to lead.